Hello and welcome to a new video on hemostasis. So what we're going to be looking at today is a process, very complex process called hemostasis. This will be a multi-part video. So in this video what we're going to look at with hemostasis is really what hemostasis is, the three main stages, and then we're going to really just look at how I prevent clots, how I prevent coagulation. So we want to look at antithrombotic and anticoagulation agents that are produced by my normal endothelial cells. So these are the topics that we hope to cover in this process. So first off, in our introduction, let's take a look at what this is. Hemostasis is simply defined as the cessation or stopping of bleeding, right? We're looking at the stopping of bleeding. We have an injury to our blood vessel, and our blood vessel here has normally, we have blood traveling in this vessel, and normally that stays in there. But then in the cases of injury where the blood vessel is opened up, that blood will leave the blood vessel and we will begin to lose stability in our body. Homeostasis is disturbed. So let's take a look at what we might do about this, and it does involve three major phases, what we call three phases of hemostasis to stop bleeding. And the very first phase is simply called the vascular phase, which you may call vascular spasm, right? That's when the blood vessel will constrict to prevent blood loss. We'll look at this more in depth later on. Then there is the so-called platelet phase, and with platelet phase, we'll see that platelets will be activated, so the platelet phase, and platelets will be activated, form a platelet plug, and seal the clot. And then 3 is simply our coagulation phase, right? Coagulation phase, which is involved with an intrinsic pathway, an extrinsic pathway, and these two feed the common pathway. And we'll look at all those pathways in a later video. So what we want to look at is really today is how do I prevent a blood clot? How do I prevent unwanted clots? And the fundamental concept here is in a blood vessel, blood is normally in a liquid state, flowing very easily through blood vessels when we are in normal homeostasis and we possess what we call hemodynamic stability. So if normal blood is a liquid flowing through a bloodstream, it's after an injury, ouch, that blood is being lost, that this blood must go to a more semi-solid state, right? And it should be liquid, normal, and only semi-solid after an injury. And this is very important that we can keep the blood going in a normal fashion. So let's look at how we might do this. And so what we're going to do is draw out our blood vessel. You've been seeing me do this drawing a couple times already in this video. And now we're going to talk about what it was I was drawing. And you notice I was drawing some lines and then drawing these little bumps in there. And what we're drawing is the inner surface of a blood vessel. First off, we will make note that we have what is called the endothelium. Now, this is nothing more than simple squamous epithelium, right? This is simple squamous, and underneath that is the connective tissue, the basal lamina, and the basement membrane tissues. And I'm just going to write BL for basal lamina of those tissues, and there will be some connective tissues with collagen fibers that are present. So when the blood goes to a normal semi-solid mass after injury here, what we want to do is change this. Now, when we have an injury, we want to be able to change it and go to a semi-solid, but we want to keep it normal liquid. How do we do this? Well, First off, the role would be mainly in two things, but the endothelium. Now, first off, the endothelial cells, when you have platelets going around, they're disc-like cells, round disc-like cells called a platelet. And platelets, when they're flowing through, they're going to try to adhere to connective tissues that allow them to stick. They can't stick to the endothelium. Now, there's a few reasons why. Normal endothelial cells start producing molecules called ADP dephosphatases. So I'm going to put DP here because I can't write dephosphatases. What these chemicals do is they take any ADPs present in bloodstream, and this molecule comes in and breaks it down to AMP. ADP is needed to activate these platelets that are swimming around in the bloodstream, flowing around and trying to get there and adhere and preventing them from doing that work. Another thing that is produced is a chemical called nitrous oxide. Now, nitrous oxide does act as a vasodilator in the blood vessels, but it also prevents platelet adhesion. And another molecule that is produced, which has got a fancy name, but we're going to call this guy by its abbreviation first, is PGI2. This is prostacyclin. It's a type of prostaglandin and nicotinoid, a local hormone. And so with my endothelial cells acting as a barrier, when the platelet tries to come by, he just cannot do it. He cannot adhere nor bind to this. So first off, this would cause, guys, the antithrombotic agents. They are going to prevent adhesion and activation of these platelets. So they act as antithrombotic agents. And this is produced from normal, happy, healthy cells who are able to do this and interact. And only when I have an injury does this process stop, when I interrupt this process. So what we're also going to take a look at is a couple other things, some anticoagulation agents that are also present in human bloodstream produced by endothelial cells. So let's also draw our normal blood vessel, and if you're doing this with me, I always urge you to draw with me. And let's draw our endothelial cells, and normal, happy, healthy endothelial cells are intact. In later videos, we're going to make injuries to these cells, but there will be a few things that are produced here, and we're going to talk about three big ones that are the anticoagulation agents, and then we'll look at a fourth one that's activated or impacted by this. So the first one, I'm going to draw an H here, kind of a big H, because this is quite an important one here, and this is heparin or heparin sulfate. So let's just kind of write heparin here, heparin sulfate. And heparin sulfate is got a binding site to it for a molecule called antithrombin. So if I get antithrombin, and since it's anti, let's kind of make him a very big T here. He is antithrombin. Antithrombin is kind of like a pair of scissors. And if you think about scissors, what does it cut? Well, it cuts thrombin. Now, thrombin is the molecule that is necessary, guys, to do a few and a variety of things, right? Thrombin does activate fibrinogen to become fibrin. But without this, we're also going to be deactivating or inactivating factor X or factor 10. Which is what is going to be turned on by our extrinsic pathway and intrinsic pathway in coagulation. So this prevents coagulations there, right? Now, there's going to be two more that we want to look at. And let me kind of change colors here. Let me use green because I want to kind of stick with a kind of a theme here. And there is a molecule here that we have that's also associated to these tissues. And it's a very important one called thrombomodulin. And what thrombomodulin does is as it would in let you know, is it's going to modulate the levels of thrombin. So this thrombin that's there in the blood is going to come by, he will bind to this thrombin. Now, this thrombin is modulated. He's kind of held to not do some of his job, right? But also, this will lead to the activation of a very important molecule, very important protein. It's called protein C. And protein C here kind of looks, guys, like a Pac-Man. Gob, 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 gob. What's he eating? He eats one of the coagulation factors, factor 5, and then he also eats 6, 7, 8, factor 8. He eats factor 5, factor 8. When he eats factor 5 and factor 8, these are coagulation factors as well, and he's gobbling those down. And there is another molecule that's produced here by my cells, which are referred to, guys, as TPA. And TPA stands for Tissue Plasminogen Activator. So what does this mean? Floating in my bloodstream is a molecule called plasminogen. Now, I always underline gen, and a thing I always want to make aware to my students and anyone who's learning from me is that when gen is present, it means it needs to be activated. So what tissue plasminogen activator does is, as it says, it activates this and becomes a molecule called plasmin. So what does plasmin do? Plasmin is going to break the clots. It is involved in the clot retraction, the breakdown of the clot. And to kind of show you what happens with molecules like this is when we take these things and we break it up, we're basically taking, normally what you do with coagulation is we produce fibrin strands. During this, we want to break down fibrin strands. And this process is called fibrinolysis. So let's take a look at that real quick. So here we would have our fibrin strands, right? Our fibrin strands are coming together, forming a polymer, and these strands of fibrin, right, are held together through chemical processes. And what we do is, once thrombin is produced, this thrombin, remember, is going to activate protein C, but also it's going to be activating this, helping and working with plasminogen as well. So that TPA comes in, the tissue plasminogen activator, to make TPA. And what we're going to do is we're going to take these molecules here and we're going to break them up into individual little small little bits, right? We're going to break it back up, and it's no longer forming strands. It's no longer forming my fibrin strands. This guy's been undone. This is that fibrinolysis we're talking about. So here we have a fibrin strand. We've broken it up, and this process is fibrinolysis. We broke fibrin. So this is how normal, happy, healthy cells and tissues prevent unwanted clots. This is why we would say things like thrombin, TPA, thrombomodulin, and heparin, protein C, would all be called anticoagulation agents. That is why that these molecules like the ADP dephosphatase, the nitrous oxides, and the prostacyclins, PGI2s, would be counted as an antithrombotic agent. And these are what these guys are doing to prevent unwanted clots in the normal, happy, healthy human. So we really hope that you found this video helpful. There will be more videos in the series to come with this. So I look forward to hearing from you guys about what you think about it. Give me any kind of feedback. I would appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.